killer was striking at teenage girls on the streets of Manchester.
The police had never seen anything like it before. They said, "We are looking for a monster here."
His methods were brutal.
Repeated blows from a paving stone had shattered her skull.
And bizarre.
The killer had bitten off her nipple and his teeth marks were left on the body.
Those who crossed his path
Even when I was unconscious on the floor, he was still stamping on my head.
recall an inner fury.
He stood there brandishing the knife. He said, "The next time I'll put it across his throat."
But what led him to murder?
Individuals like him enjoy being violent. It's gratifying for them. It's who they are.
And was he born? In the mid-1970s, the industrial hub of Manchester hit on tough times. As with many areas, the economic downturn took its toll on the close-knit communities to the northeast of the city.
It was very much a working class area, although much of the industry had closed down.
It was fairly rough and ready. Terraced properties with backyards, but all the families knew each other.
It certainly was a hard-working community, but there were elements of criminals amongst that community.
Alan Hart covered the local area as a journalist for over 40 years. But in all that time, one story would unfold that was so disturbing, it would remain with him forever. On the 8th of March 1976, Sharon Mossop was on a night out. It was a rare opportunity for the 17-year-old, who was the eldest of 5 sisters, had spent much of her teenage years helping out at home.
Because Mum was working, Sharon, because she was the eldest, then started to play Mum. And she did a really, really good job of it. She was really, really so much fun.
She was a really great big sister, you know. She definitely took that role seriously and she took care of us because she had a very nurturing nature.
We completely respected her because she was just like the whole shebang, you know.
Despite attracting attention from the local boys, the aspiring hairdresser had recently become engaged.
She was a real firecracker, you know, and she was very good looking. But, you know, she picked her horse, you know.
She was quite young, but she was very mature for her age, so it was a natural progression.
On the night in question, Sharon had been to a works night out in Bolton before returning to Manchester. As she was staying with her father in Failsworth, she was unsure of her route home.
She rang her father at around about midnight. She was told by her father what number bus to get, and he expected her home in about half an hour.
Having caught the night bus, the teenager was last seen at a stop just yards from the Rochdale Canal. Her father's house was just a short walk away.
She never did arrive home. There was a big search for her. Her father feared the worst.
The following morning, rookie police cadet 16-year-old Mark Wilkinson received a call to head to the Rochdale Canal.
I think it was the first call we had that particular shift to say that there was the body of a female in the canal. I remember the police officer that I was with said undoubtedly it would be a suicide.
But as they approached, the officer soon realised his initial theory was wide of the mark.
When we arrived here at the canal bank, it was quite obvious it was more than a suicide.
The body was identified as that of the missing girl, 17-year-old Sharon Mossop.
She was naked, half of her body was above the water level, and it was a particularly cold morning. And I remember quite distinctively that the canal, in fact, had frozen over, so it looked as though she was actually leaning on the ice. I remember looking at this girl who was of a similar age to myself and just wondering what had actually happened.
As investigators and press arrived on the scene, the cause of death became apparent.
That's the part where she was pulled out, just down there.
Local journalist Alan Hart recalls the appalling aftermath of a brutal attack.
She had been battered and mutilated, and the evidence seemed to be that she'd been strangled with an item of her own clothing.
Further examination of Sharon's body revealed another sordid detail.
It emerged that one of her nipples had been bitten off.
News of the twisted murder shattered the world of the victim's close-knit family.
The police came and said, "Can the children go upstairs?" But then we heard our mother screaming. We came running back downstairs and then we just seen our mum go into the ground. And it was just unbelievable. And our mother was sedated for days and weeks. It wasn't a good situation. To see our mother, it was awful.
But the horrific mutilation of Sharon's body was not an isolated incident. Police would soon discover a serial killer was operating in the area. "20 years previously, the canal and network of Victorian streets had been the stomping ground for a group of local kids.
We're on Stanley Street, Newton Heath. I used to live in this area when I was younger.
Colin Hardy recalls growing up in a close-knit community.
All the kids knew each other. All the kids played together. It was a good area, a nice area.
But despite his close group of friends, Colin soon realised he stood out from the crowd.
I think I was probably maybe about 8 or 9 when I realised that my family was different from sort of other families.
Peter Melia grew up in Newton Heath alongside the Hardys.
The family themselves were well respected, really. It was just that Trevor Hardy was the black sheep of the family.
The second youngest of 4 children, Trevor's delinquent behaviour had been evident since his early years.
He started off by doing a bit of shoplifting, stealing fruit from vegetable stalls.
He did have a really bad reputation for breaking into houses, breaking into premises. People didn't leave the doors open. If they went out, they made sure the windows were closed. Like my eldest brother was good at plumbing, Trevor was good at burgling houses.
He broke into my own house, or my parents' house, on at least 2 occasions.
The people he burgled, a lot of the time, was known to the family. It's as if he was punishing us.
Colin believes his older brother's vindictive streak was sparked by a change in the family dynamic.
Just after I was born, he committed his first offence at 8 years old. I think somewhere there was some jealousy that he wasn't the youngest anymore. I also think he harboured a grudge against my mum because she'd brought me into the world.
As Trevor entered his teenage years, his behaviour became increasingly unpredictable.
As he got older, his violence started to appear.
He was one of those people that no sooner a word than a blow.
As a boy, Peter Melia found himself the target of an unprovoked attack.
I came up over the canal bridge and just something in the corner of my eye, some movement made me just turn, and he fired this high-powered air rifle straight at me, hit me in the face, between the eyes just there.
Individuals like Hardy enjoy being violent. It's who they are. It's gratifying for them. It's stimulating for them. And it's not to solve a problem, it's to gratify themselves.
As the wayward teenager terrorised the neighbourhood, his father, a British Rail Guard, struggled to cope.
I think my dad was scared of Trevor. In all the years I can remember, my dad never argued with him. He never lifted a finger towards him. But I think my dad would have preferred it if Trevor had just disappeared somehow.
As his behaviour deteriorated, numerous escapes from Borstal and approved schools forced authorities to take drastic action.
He was sent to prison at 15. It's a strange way, it's Manchester prison, the youngest person ever to be sent there.
Although nobody knew it yet, Hardy's early misdemeanours would one day pale into insignificance as he evolved into a very different type of criminal. In March 1976, the city of Manchester was shocked by the brutal murder of local girl Sharon Mossoff. The 17-year-old was strangled and horrifically mutilated before being dumped in a canal in the northeastern suburb of Failsworth. As detectives set to work, they would soon learn that the killer's twisted MO had been witnessed before in a community nearby. Eight months earlier, 18-year-old Wanda Scala had just landed a part-time job in a local pub. Journalist Alan Hart discovered a teenager who was very much at the centre of her neighbourhood.
People knew Wanda and they'd seen her growing up as a little girl. The community was quite a tough working class area, but the people were decent, honest citizens by and large.
People did look out for each other. Poverty often leads to that kind of commitment and close-knit attitude.
On the 19th of July 1975, Wanda finished her pub shift in the early hours of the morning. The short walk home along the main road was a well-trodden route for the teenager. But as her brief journey drew to a close, she suffered a brutal attack.
She was about a minute from her home when her life ended.
The local girl's body was discovered by a passerby the following morning. She had been partially covered by rubble on the edge of a building site.
The police had never seen anything like it before.
A post-mortem revealed that Wanda had been strangled with her own clothes. Her death had also been caused by a series of horrific head injuries.
Repeated blows from a paving stone had shattered her skull. And her socks had been tied around her neck.
But investigators were also shocked to find an even more disturbing aspect to the barbaric act.
At some stage during this violent attack, the killer had bitten off her nipple, and his teeth marks were left on the body.
biting off women's nipples is the clearest example of ritualistic behavior. His aggressive instinct and his sexual instinct become fused so that the aggressive act is stimulating. Nothing could be more dangerous than an individual with that type of dynamic.
Senior officers who thought they had seen it all were absolutely stunned. They'd never seen anything so brutal. I do recall they said, "We are looking for a monster here."
In them days, murders was something you read about in London, Birmingham. I think it caused a certain amount of fear because, you know, whichever way you look at it, there was a killer on the loose.
Police told women to go out in pairs with boyfriends, brothers, dads. A lot of people were scared. This, after all, wasn't just an ordinary killing. This was the brutal, sadistic murder of a very young woman.
As investigators desperately searched for a lead, neighbouring communities in northeast Manchester continued to live in the shadow of a crime spree. Former delinquent Trevor Hardy had built up his empire over a number of years and had even resorted to recruiting local youngsters off the streets.
He certainly attracted a lot of other young people of my age group in the area. He always seemed to have a few hangers-on.
And I think a lot of them were tea leaves, you know. I think a lot of them were thieves. One policeman did call him Fagin.
For much of the time, the career criminal's personal life had also revolved around the young.
Hardy didn't seem to have any steady girlfriends. He had these friendships with younger children.
During his late 20s, one local teenager had made a particularly strong impression on him.
Beverly was a young girl, about 14, bit of a tomboy. I think Beverly liked the idea of being around Trevor because he had this reputation, and most of the time he always had a few quid on him. And I think with Trevor it boosted his ego, having a young girl.
She said she looked up to him as a father figure. Hardy's version of events became different because he claimed that at some stage they'd been snogging, and Beverly said that this was a figment of his imagination.
As Hardy continued to exert control over the local community, his reputation was increasingly forged through fear.
He was a man to be avoided. He was a man who was totally unpredictable.
He had this reputation as a hard man. And he was. He was handy with his fists. He could walk in a pub and empty it very fast.
Peter Melia grew up in the same neighbourhood as Trevor Hardy. Having had several altercations as a child, he would experience Hardy's violence firsthand on the streets of Newton Heath.
I remember walking along this way, coming from a youth club.
Peter was nearly home when he spotted a suspect character crouched in an adjacent alleyway.
There was a light in the yard behind him. He stood up in the light and I could then see that it was Trevor Hardy. He started to jog down here, so I walked on.
Fearful of Hardy's reputation, Peter headed for the safety of home, but only made it to the front door of a neighbouring pub.
As he approached me, he got about 8 feet away and literally launched himself through the air. He headbutted me in the face and I just felt a really sharp pain in my side. As I got to the corner there was blood in a puddle on the floor near my foot, and I realised at that point that he'd stabbed me. He stood there brandishing the knife. and he said, the next time I'll put it across your throat.
What drives you to stab somebody? There's got to be something very seriously wrong somewhere.
You know, Hardy doesn't think anything's wrong with him. He sees the world in such a distorted way that he thinks something's wrong with everybody else.
Peter Melia was not the only one to bear the scars of Hardy's fury. As his violence intensified, pub brawls would become the norm. He would be imprisoned following a vicious attack in 1972. Three years later, in October 1975, the neighbouring district of Moston was still reeling from the sadistic killing of 17-year-old Wanda Scala. As police drew up a list of potential suspects, Colin Hardy had received an unwelcome call from his older brother Trevor, summoning him to a local pub.
Well, we hadn't seen each other for months. Well, probably longer than that. A bit apprehensive. I just didn't want to be with him.
Colin had distanced himself from his increasingly unpredictable sibling. Trevor had recently been released from prison when he turned up with his new partner, Sheila.
I think it was probably around about the second pint. It had been idle chit-chat. And just right out of the blue just said to me, "Have you been questioned about the Wanda Scala murder?" So I said, "Well, why should I be questioned about it?" And just as I'm stood here now, he just sat there with no expression on his face and said, "I did it." I did think I'd heard wrong. I said, "You what?" He said, "I did her." My brain just stopped working. I'm thinking, he can't be serious. This Sheila turned around and said, "Colin, it's true." There's not a flicker of emotion in his face. Not a smile, not a frown. My mind just went into overdrive then. If I was scared before, I was petrified now. I wanted to be 1,000 miles away from that room. I wanted to be 1,000 miles away from him. And I just didn't know how to do it. And people might think, well, why didn't you just stand up and shout, "Somebody get the police"? You go into it's like a meltdown.
Struggling to comprehend his brother's extraordinary revelation, a confused Colin eventually allowed Trevor and his girlfriend to accompany him to his flat.
I thought, well, once I get home, you know, everybody thinks you're safe in your own house. But I knew as soon as I walked through the door, I'd made a mistake taking him home.
Colin was about to feel the full wrath of his brother, Trevor Hardy. In July 1975, the mutilated body of teenager Wanda Scala was discovered on a building site in Moston, Manchester. As police searched for the twisted killer, local career criminal Trevor Hardy had just confessed to the brutal killing to his younger brother Colin. Traumatised by the news, he had allowed Trevor and his girlfriend to accompany him home.
By the time the brothers got to Colin's flat, Hardy, by now sobering up, began to regret his decision to tell Colin what had happened.
It wasn't even 10 minutes since we went through the door. And I think I said something like, "Well, look, Trevor, you're going to miss the last bus." And that was it then. He went absolutely berserk. Well, I thought I could handle it myself, but I don't even remember the first punch.
Colin's girlfriend could only look on at the sustained and brutal attack that followed.
Even when I was unconscious on the floor, he was still stamping on my head. My partner, she was absolutely petrified. I'm on the floor bleeding, unconscious. And he turns round to her and says, "I'm feeling a bit hungry, make me beans on toast." And she was that scared, she went in the kitchen, stepped over me and made him beans on toast. And this woman who he was with, this Sheila, she just sat there and never said a word.
Battered and bruised, Colin regained consciousness later that night. The following day, he reported his brother's confession to the murder of teenager Wanda Scala.
Hardy was arrested and police demanded an imprint of his teeth so that they could compare it to the bite marks on Wanda's breast.
But officers were unaware that Hardy had gone to extreme measures to cover his tracks.
He arranged for somebody to smuggle a nail file to him while he was in custody. He'd filed his teeth so that the bite marks on the body of Wanda Scala would not be matched to him.
To file one's teeth down, which is very, very painful, that's quite unusual. This individual really had an awareness of forensic evidence. So he was intelligent. Unfortunately, he used his intelligence in a very, very deviant way.
The case against Hardy received an irrevocable blow when, out of the blue, his partner insisted he was with her on the night of Wanda's murder.
His newly filed teeth, as well as a false alibi from his girlfriend Sheila, meant police had no option but to let him go.
And I couldn't believe it. I said, if you let him go and he effing kills again, I said, be it on your own heads.
Despite his concerns for the local girls in the neighbourhood, Colin was also fearful for his own life.
Well, after that, we turned the flat into a fortress. I put extra bolts on the doors, I put locks, I put wire over the windows, I put broken glass all on the balcony. So basically, we were living in fear.
With his elder brother set on revenge, Colin would suffer another attack. When Trevor only received a suspended sentence, Colin felt the pressure was too much to bear.
I went right off the rails. I got in some trouble and I got jailed.
Although Colin's life had taken a serious downturn, his elder brother Trevor appeared to have turned over a new leaf.
5 months after Wanda's murder, Hardy was branded a local hero in the papers for saving a family from a house fire.
They reported that Hardy, a brave man, had burst into the house and rescued somebody from the fire.
Hardy relished the attention and was pictured beaming in the local papers.
Subsequently, it emerged that Hardy himself had started the fire, not being a hero, but an arsonist.
I don't think he cared as to whether or not people lived or died or the building burned down or whatever. It was just that he could get over on someone. He could manipulate someone. He could fool someone. And he felt good about that.
Trevor Hardy continued to roam the streets of northeast Manchester throughout the early months of 1976. His younger brother Colin was still behind bars when he received some shocking news.
One day, I'd been in the workshops and we'd come back for dinner, and I used to have a paper and right on the front of the Daily Mirror, another girl had been killed, and I knew it was him.
The brutal canal-side murder of 17-year-old Sharon Mossoff bore all the hallmarks of the frenzied attack on Wanda Scala in the nearby district of Moston.
Both Sharon and Wanda had had items of the clothing tied around their necks. They'd both been ferociously beaten, and both had had their nipples bitten off.
There was very little doubt that the person who'd killed Wanda Scala had also killed Sharon Mossoff.
Nobody told us directly, we were children, but we would listen to the grown-ups and we would hear our mother say, you know, apparently he's murdered Wanda Scala. It began to feel very strange to think that this same guy took my sister. So finding that out was really quite strange for me.
As detectives focused their search for a single perpetrator, Colin Hardy could only look on from his cell. Having already failed to bring his brother to justice, Colin felt the latest violent attack was too much to bear.
I've lived with that, and I'll live with it for the rest of my life. Always asking, could I have done more?
The police had been up against an elusive adversary, but finally Trevor Hardy was caught in the act. His brutal assault in an Oldham pub on a local woman bore witnesses.
There had been some kind of a dispute between them in the pub, and he'd dragged her into the ladies' toilets, and he'd grabbed her so hard by the throat that she'd bitten her own tongue, and he'd run away when they'd been interrupted.
Hardy evaded capture for a further 2 months, but his final downfall would come at the hand of his now ex-partner, Sheila.
They went to question Sheila at her new flat in Stockport, where she admitted that she'd given a false alibi to the Wanda murder. Police then put Sheila under surveillance, hoping that at some point Hardy would be in touch, and as predicted, he did go to visit her and was promptly arrested in May 1976.
When they told me they'd arrested him, the emotions was unbelievable. There was guilt, there was joy. I just broke down, tears. I just couldn't believe it. My family was now safe.
Hardy was detained in prison, suspected of the murders of local teenagers Wanda Scala and Sharon Mossoff. However, just 3 months later, the prisoner made an extraordinary revelation to the lead detective on the case.
When the officer was called to the prison, he revealed an absolute bombshell. And that was, in addition to Wanda and Sharon, there was a third girl whom he'd killed.
15-year-old Leslie Stewart had been reported missing in the Manchester suburb of Newton Heath 7 months before the murder of Wanda Scala.
In those days, a 15-year-old girl wouldn't necessarily be treated as anything other than a missing person. More likely a runaway, and certainly nothing as sinister as a murder case.
She'd just joined a long list of sad cases of missing teenagers.
Her disappearance on New Year's Eve 1974 had not been linked to the brutal teenage murders that had later plagued the area. On the night in question, Leslie had been dropped off in Newton Heath and was last seen heading to meet her boyfriend at a party.
And that's the last time she was seen alive.
Unbeknownst to the 15-year-old, Trevor Hardy had been lurking in the shadows.
Leslie Stewart was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Another young girl, alone at night, just like the other two.
As Trevor Hardy's confession unravelled, he insisted that he had mistaken Leslie for former teenage acquaintance Beverly. He claimed that on that night he had been hell-bent on revenge after the young girl had severed ties with him during his recent spell in prison.
As Leslie got out of the car that was dropping her off, the driver said, "Good night, Leslie." But tragically for her, Trevor Hardy thought he heard the word Beverly.
So he shouted, "Hey, Beverly." When she turned round, he stabbed her in the throat.
After watching Leslie bleed to death, Hardy dragged her to a secluded spot where he dug a shallow grave, then walked to his parents' house where he watched a Hogmanay TV show with his mother.
But Hardy's gruesome account didn't end there. He insisted on taking police to the scene of the horrific murder in Newton Heath.
If memory serves, it's pretty much where the net is, round about there that her body was found.
Although almost 2 years had passed, the 30-year-old gave a detailed account of his attempts to conceal Leslie's body.
He claimed that in the first instance, he'd not buried it very deeply. And so after a few days, he came back, buried it a little further.
But Hardy hadn't just been intent on covering his tracks. Detectives were about to learn the full extent of the killer's depravity. In 1976, Trevor Hardy was facing charges for the murders of 2 teenage girls in northeast Manchester. But in an extraordinary twist, the local man had also confessed to the earlier killing of missing 15-year-old Leslie Stewart, taking police to the murder site in Newton Heath. Having located a shallow grave, investigators were horrified to discover that the corpse was not complete.
He'd mutilated her body, cutting Leslie's head off. He buried it somewhere else. Then he came back again, cut her feet off, and buried the feet somewhere else nearby.
All this was in view of a local school, and he had boasted that the kids had seen him dismembering the parts and playing with them and burying them without knowing what he was up to.
He even took a ring off her finger and gave it to his girlfriend as a love token.
What kind of a person goes back to a body and does what he did?
There was something with that victim that really grabbed him. He was certainly attached to that victim in a way that he wasn't attached to others. He kept going back to relive the experience, to further mutilate the body, and to do other things with the body to continue the gratification.
That is a killer who enjoyed killing.
In April 1977, Trevor Hardy was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murders of Leslie Stewart, Wanda Scala, and Sharon Mossoff.
Subsequently, he was told life would mean life and that he would have to stay in prison for the rest of his life.
In the wake of Hardy's reign of terror, many struggled to comprehend why he had targeted the young teenagers. Although the profile of his victims bore marked similarities, Hardy maintained that 2 of the attacks were purely random.
I've never believed any of the excuses he's given. Wanda Scala, a mugging that went wrong. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Why mutilate the body? No, he enjoyed it.
these individuals feel very weak inside. They feel very inadequate inside. And so it's not at all uncommon for them to target children, young adolescents, until they gain some degree of comfort in killing, and then they might attack someone who might show some level of resistance.
But was the twisted violence dealt by this sadistic killer the inevitable result of a troubled life? Or was Trevor Hardy born to kill?
Lots and lots of people had similar upbringings to Trevor Hardy, and they didn't go off the rails in the way that he did. He is one of these people who is just pure evil.
My friend who lived on his street said he would kill animals and everything when he was a kid. He was just a very sadistic person.
Considering how many murders he did and how much violence was in his life, I definitely think that he was born to just be a killer.
He was supposed to have had some kind of an accident when he was young, and it involved his skull. And there was a splinter of bone, and when he got excited, this bone pressed on the brain.
I don't like to say someone was born to kill, but he certainly had a predisposition for violence. And head injury can weaken someone's inhibitory controls and make it much easier for someone to act out their impulses or what's going on internally.
For many, the horror of this brutal killer has faded away. But some will never forget.
I was just unfortunate enough to have him as a brother, and it'll never go away. You get up day after day and you just get on with your life. I decided to take part in this programme because I wanted my chance to tell my side of things. I have not asked for any payment. I would not insult the victims' families by asking for payment.
And for those who lost their lives, their memory will always remain.
We don't shy away from talking about Sharon because she was our big sister and she was a big part of our life.
She's just remembered as a really, really, really fun, fantastic, nurturing, loving big sister.
There are some secrets that refuse to die, not because someone protects them, not because someone remembers them, but because they become part of a place, woven into its streets, buried beneath years of ordinary life until everyone forgets that something terrible once happened there. And then one day, without warning, the silence breaks. Michigan, October 2000. The air was already cold enough to sting exposed skin. Trees along the roads had turned orange and brown, shedding leaves that gathered in parking lots and empty sidewalks. It looked peaceful, the kind of town where people still wave at each other from their front porches, the kind of place where nobody locked their doors. Until one woman vanished. 31-year-old Emily Carter was not the type of person who disappeared. She lived alone in a modest house on the outskirts of town. She worked at a local insurance office. She volunteered every Sunday at a community center. She called her mother every evening at exactly 8:30 p.m. She had routines. People with routines rarely vanish without explanation. On October 14th, 2000, Emily finished work at 5:12 p.m. Multiple co-workers remembered seeing her smile before leaving the office. She said she was heading home because she planned to prepare dinner and watch a movie. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious, nothing memorable. At 6:03 p.m., a cashier at a grocery store remembered her buying soup, bread, milk, and a magazine. At 6:27 p.m., a neighbor saw her pulling into her driveway. At 8:30 p.m., her mother waited for the phone call that never came. At 9:15 p.m., she called Emily's house. No answer. At 10 p.m., she called again. No answer. At midnight, she became worried. By the next morning, she was terrified. Police arrived at Emily's house at 8:14 a.m. The front door was unlocked. The lights in the kitchen were still on. A pot of soup sat untouched on the stove. The television was playing static. Her purse was hanging near the entrance. Her wallet remained inside. Her car was parked exactly where she had left it. Nothing looked stolen. Nothing looked disturbed. There was no sign of a struggle. It was as if she had simply evaporated into thin air. But then investigators noticed something strange. On the kitchen floor, near the dining table, a single muddy footprint. Just one. Not a trail. Not multiple prints. Only one, as though someone had stepped inside, and then disappeared along with her. The footprint was partial and blurry, too incomplete for identification, too small to determine much. The evidence technicians photographed it anyway. Nobody imagined that image would sit inside a dusty file cabinet for 26 years. The town exploded with fear. News crews arrived within hours. Headlines spread everywhere. Local woman missing. Community on edge. Police search for answers. Volunteers gathered by the hundreds. People search forests, lakes, abandoned buildings, roadside ditches. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Still nothing. No body. No ransom. No sightings. No evidence. It was as if someone had erased her from existence. Theories began to grow. Perhaps she ran away. Perhaps she was kidnapped. Perhaps she had a secret life. Perhaps she crossed paths with a stranger. Every theory sounded possible. Every theory sounded wrong. Her family rejected the idea she had left voluntarily. Emily was organized, responsible, predictable. She had plans for the future. A vacation brochure was still sitting on her coffee table with handwritten notes. A dentist appointment was scheduled for the following week. Christmas gifts she had already purchased remained hidden inside her bedroom closet. People preparing for tomorrow do not usually disappear forever. Then something else surfaced. A witness, a retired school teacher named Margaret Hill, came forward 4 days after the disappearance. She said she had seen a dark-colored pickup truck parked near Emily's house around 7:45 p.m. Its engine was running. Its headlights were off. She couldn't identify the driver. She couldn't read the license plate. But she remembered one detail. The truck remained parked for almost 20 minutes. Then it drove away slowly. At first, investigators thought they finally had their break. Except there was a problem. Nobody else saw the truck. No cameras existed nearby. No physical evidence connected any vehicle to the scene. The lead went nowhere. And then another unsettling detail emerged. Emily's dog, a golden retriever named Max. Police found him inside the house, alive, healthy, waiting. Veterinarians estimated he had not been fed since the previous evening, which meant Emily never returned to take care of him. That fact haunted investigators, because people who planned to leave rarely abandon beloved pets without preparation. Someone interrupted her life. Someone prevented her from coming home again. But who? That question would destroy careers, destroy families, destroy an entire community's sense of safety. Detective Robert Gaines was assigned as lead investigator. 46 years old, 15 years on the force. Respected, experienced, disciplined. He believed every disappearance had a mistake hidden somewhere. People lie. People panic. People forget. Eventually someone slips. He interviewed over 400 individuals, co-workers, friends, neighbors, former classmates, ex-boyfriends, distant relatives. Nothing. Nobody had enemies. Nobody held grudges. Nobody wanted her dead. It made no sense. Then investigators found something disturbing inside her office. A note, tiny, folded, hidden inside a desk drawer. 3 words. Stop asking questions. No signature. No date. No explanation. Co-workers had never seen it before. Emily never mentioned being threatened. Nobody knew who wrote it. Suddenly the investigation changed. Had she discovered something? Was she involved in something dangerous? Police dug deeper into her life. Bank accounts. Phone records. Emails. Everything looked ordinary. Painfully ordinary. No suspicious transactions. No secret contacts. No hidden debts. Nothing. The note became another dead end. But years later, people would remember those 3 words and wonder if they had ignored the biggest clue of all. Winter arrived. Search efforts faded. News crews moved on. Life resumed, at least on the surface. Underneath, fear remained alive. Parents refused to let children walk home alone. Women carried pepper spray. People installed locks. Every unfamiliar vehicle attracted attention. The town changed forever. Then came another twist. 7 months after Emily disappeared, a jogger discovered a silver necklace beside a hiking trail 30 miles away. Emily's mother immediately recognized it. A small heart-shaped pendant. A birthday gift she had given her daughter years earlier. Police rushed to search the area. Helicopters. Dogs. Dozens of officers. Nothing. No remains. No clothing. No evidence. Just the necklace. Some investigators believe someone deliberately planted it there. Others believed animals had dragged it from another location. Nobody knew. It only deepened the mystery. Years passed. The case grew colder. Boxes piled higher. Files yellowed. Technology advanced while evidence gathered dust. Detective Gaines refused to give up. Every year he reopened the folder. Every year he stared at Emily's smiling photograph. Every year he promised her family he would find answers. Every year he failed. By 2008, budget cuts reduced manpower. By 2012, new detectives replaced older ones. By 2015, only occasional reviews remained. Emily became a statistic. Case number MC, 2000-147. A name inside an archive. Another cold case. Another mystery. Another life suspended in time. But the silence was deceptive. Because somewhere inside that town, someone knew exactly what happened. Someone walked those same streets every day. Someone attended neighborhood gatherings. Someone smiled at neighbors. Someone shook hands. Someone watched 26 years pass without consequence. The terrifying possibility wasn't that the killer escaped. The terrifying possibility was that everyone already knew him, without realizing it, without suspecting it, without ever looking twice. Because monsters rarely look like monsters. Sometimes they look ordinary. Sometimes they look friendly. Sometimes they become invisible. And for 26 years, invisibility was a perfect disguise. Until one forgotten piece of evidence hidden inside an old storage room would suddenly drag the entire nightmare back into the light. A discovery so small that investigators had overlooked it for decades. A discovery that would expose a secret buried beneath 26 years of silence. And once the truth began to surface, an entire Michigan community would realize something horrifying. The person responsible had never really left. He had been there all along. For 26 years, the evidence sat inside a climate-controlled storage room, untouched except for routine inventory checks and occasional reviews by detectives who never expected to find anything new. Thousands of cold cases filled the shelves. Brown cardboard boxes, old photographs, cassette recordings, paper files with fading ink. Entire lives reduced to labels and dates. Emily Carter's case occupied 2 boxes. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing that stood out. Just another unsolved disappearance that time had quietly buried. Until January 2026. A newly created cold case task force was established in Michigan with a single mission: reopen investigations that modern forensic technology might finally solve. Detective Sarah Monroe led the unit. 39 years old. Sharp. Relentless. Obsessed with details. She had a reputation for questioning assumptions other detectives accepted as fact. Her philosophy was simple. The truth rarely disappears. People simply stop looking in the right places. On her first day reviewing Emily's file, she noticed something strange. Everyone had focused on what was missing. Nobody had focused on what remained. The untouched soup, the television static, the muddy footprint, the necklace, the anonymous note, the parked truck. Dozens of theories had been built around those details. Yet one item had barely received attention. Emily's grocery receipt. She stared at it. October 14, 2000, 6:03 p.m. Soup, bread, milk, magazine, laundry detergent. But something was odd. The detergent was missing from her house. Every other item had been accounted for. The detergent was gone. How could that happen? Detectives from 2000 believed she may have put it away somewhere, but no record confirmed it. Sarah searched the evidence inventory. No detergent, no photographs, no mention, nothing. A tiny inconsistency. Maybe meaningless. Maybe not. She kept digging. Then she found an old interview transcript. Neighbor interview. October 16th, 2000. Question. Did you notice anything unusual? Answer. There was a strong chemical smell outside around 8. The detective who conducted the interview had scribbled a note in the margin. Probably fertilizer. No follow-up. No investigation. Sarah frowned. Chemical smell. Missing detergent. Coincidence? Possibly. She requested every archive photograph. Hours later, she examined high-resolution scans on her computer. Kitchen, living room, bedroom, garage. Then she froze. Laundry room. A single empty space on a shelf. Exactly large enough for a detergent bottle. She zoomed in. The dust pattern was visible. Everything else remained undisturbed. Someone had removed it recently. But why? A bottle of detergent. Why would someone take it? The answer arrived almost immediately. Fingerprints. Back in 2000, detergent bottles were rarely processed because investigators prioritized obvious evidence. If someone touched it, if someone carried it away, it was gone forever. Unless the thief intentionally removed it. Someone might have taken it to eliminate evidence. Suddenly the case looked different. What if Emily knew her attacker? What if she handed him something? What if he touched something inside her home? What if he panicked afterward? Sarah reopened every interview, every statement, every timeline, every name. One individual repeatedly appeared in the background. Never a suspect, never a person of interest, just someone who always seemed nearby. Daniel Mercer, age 35 in 2000, local handyman, married, 2 children, friendly reputation. He lived 3 streets away. He had repaired Emily's fence 6 months before she disappeared. He attended the same church. He volunteered at community events. Everybody liked him. Investigators interviewed him once. The interaction lasted only 18 minutes. Question. Did you see Emily that evening? Answer. No. Question. Did you know her well? Answer. Not really. Question. Anything suspicious? Answer. Nothing at all. End of interview. No red flags. No contradictions. Case closed. Sarah wasn't convinced. She searched deeper. Phone records. Nothing. Financial records. Nothing. Employment history. Nothing. Then she found something interesting. On October 15, 2000, the day after Emily vanished, Daniel Mercer called in sick to work. His first sick day in 7 years. He claimed he had the flu. Nobody verified it. Another coincidence. Then another. His truck, dark blue pickup. Model year, 1998. The same type Margaret Hill had described. Still not enough. Still circumstantial. Still impossible to arrest anyone. Sarah knew she needed evidence. Real evidence. She re-examined every preserved item. Clothing, paper documents, fibers, hair samples. And then she opened a sealed envelope. The muddy footprint photograph. One image. Ignored for decades. But technology had changed. The image was scanned into a forensic enhancement program. Within hours, details emerged that nobody could previously see. A partial sole pattern. Distinctive. Unusual. 3 missing tread marks. She searched old databases. Nothing. She searched archive footwear catalogs. Then a match appeared. A work boot manufactured between 1998 and 2001. Popular among construction workers and handymen. Over 200 people in town could have owned them. But one name immediately stood out. Daniel Mercer. The evidence was still weak. But the coincidences were multiplying. Sarah visited him. 26 years had transformed him. 61 years old now. Gray hair, glasses, grandfather. Quiet neighborhood. Nothing threatening. Nothing suspicious. He smiled when she introduced herself. Cold case, he said. Emily Carter? He laughed nervously. I haven't heard that name in years. People often revealed themselves through their reactions. Most innocent people became surprised. Some became emotional. Some became curious. Daniel became uncomfortable. Very quickly, his eyes shifted. His fingers twitched. His voice tightened. She noticed everything. Why reopen it now? He asked. Sarah shrugged. Technology. He swallowed hard. After all this time, there it was. Fear. Small. Almost invisible. But real. She left without confrontation. Then she discovered another bombshell. His wife had died in 2019. Natural causes. Before her death, she had attended therapy. Therapy records were legally inaccessible. But one note from a released affidavit caught Sarah's attention. The therapist had documented a statement. I've lived with secrets for too long. No further details. No names. No explanation. A chill ran down her spine. Was it related? Or another coincidence? She continued digging. Then she uncovered something nobody had noticed in 26 years. Property records. In 2000, Daniel owned a storage shed outside town. Investigators never searched it, because they never knew it existed. The property had since been demolished. Too late, or so it seemed. Satellite imagery archives still existed. She pulled up old photographs. October 2000. The shed appeared normal. November 2000. Fresh soil nearby. December 2000. Snow covered everything. Sarah stared at the images. Fresh soil. Fresh digging. Her pulse accelerated. She requested ground-penetrating radar for the abandoned lot. The team arrived 2 days later. The machine rolled slowly across frozen earth. Beep. Nothing. Beep. Nothing. Then, suddenly, a dense anomaly. 6 feet underground. Everyone stopped moving. No one spoke. Workers began to dig. Every shovel felt heavier. Every minute stretched longer. Then a deputy froze. Bone fragment. Silence consumed the entire site. Nobody needed to say it aloud. Everyone understood. After 26 years, someone had finally been found. But the nightmare was only beginning. Because alongside the remains was another discovery. A rusted metal box. Locked. Sealed. Untouched. A box that had sat underground since the year 2000. A box that no one could explain. A box that would soon reveal a horrifying truth. One that investigators had never imagined. One that would shatter the image of a beloved member of the community. One that would expose a man who had successfully hidden behind normal life for more than 2 decades. And for the first time since Emily Carter vanished, silence was no longer protecting him. Silence was starting to betray him. The entire excavation site went silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound came from the wind pushing dead grass across the frozen ground. 26 years. 26 years of unanswered questions. 26 years of theories, false leads, and empty promises. Now, 6 feet beneath an abandoned piece of land, investigators were staring at the first undeniable sign that Emily Carter had never left Michigan alive. The bone fragment was carefully collected. Then another was discovered. Then another. Soon the truth became unavoidable. This was not an accidental burial. This was deliberate. Someone had dug a grave. Someone had planned it. And someone had expected the earth to keep it secret forever. But the object that captured everyone's attention was the metal box. Small, about 14 inches wide, covered in rust, secured with a corroded latch, buried inches away from the remains. Detective Sarah Monroe immediately ordered forensic technicians to preserve it intact. No one would open it at the scene. No one would risk contaminating evidence. Hours later, inside the forensic laboratory, cameras rolled as technicians carefully removed layers of dirt. The latch snapped. The lid slowly opened. Inside were 6 items: a photograph, a cassette tape, a handwritten map, a silver wristwatch. a pair of latex gloves, and a folded piece of paper. Sarah stared at the contents. This was impossible. Killers usually destroyed evidence. They did not bury souvenirs beside their victims, unless they never expected anyone to find them. The photograph came first. Emily, standing outside the community center, smiling, completely unaware someone was watching her. The image had clearly been taken from a distance. She wasn't posing. She didn't know. The realization sent chills throughout the room. Someone had been observing her long before she disappeared. Then came the map. 3 red circles marked locations around town. Her house, her workplace, the community center. Everywhere she routinely visited. Someone had tracked her movements. For days, maybe weeks, perhaps longer. Then Sarah unfolded the note. The handwriting was shaky. 3 words. The exact same words found in Emily's desk drawer. Stop asking questions. Everyone in the room exchanged glances. The same phrase. The same message. The same warning. This wasn't random. Emily had discovered something. And someone had desperately wanted her silent. The cassette tape was next. Technicians cleaned it carefully. The old magnetic ribbon remained intact. An ancient recorder was brought in. Everyone gathered. Sarah pressed play. Static. Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy breathing. A car door closing. And then voices. A man's voice. Low. Calm. Emily! Please don't make this harder. Several seconds passed. Then Emily spoke. Her voice trembled. What you're doing is wrong. The man answered. You should have left it alone. Emily replied. I'm going to tell people. Silence. Then one sentence. The sentence that changed everything. You think they'll believe you over me? The tape ended abruptly. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. The room had become ice cold. The killer had spoken. His voice had been preserved for 26 years. Unfortunately, there was a problem. The recording quality was terrible. There was no immediate identification. No names. No direct confession. Still, it was enough. The investigation exploded back to life. News outlets returned. Headlines spread across the country. Michigan cold case breakthrough. Remains discovered after 26 years. Secret recording emerges. Communities that had long forgotten Emily Carter suddenly remembered everything. People dug out old newspapers. Families revisited conversations from decades earlier. Social media erupted. Thousands of people began analyzing every detail. And once again, one name surfaced repeatedly. Daniel Mercer. Still not enough to arrest him. Still not enough to charge him. But enough to make him nervous. Police surveillance teams quietly observed him. The changes were immediate. He stopped attending church. He stopped visiting neighbors. He barely left his house. He turned off outdoor lights. Curtains remained closed. Then investigators noticed something strange. At exactly 2:14 a.m. one night, Daniel drove away. He hadn't left his house after dark in years. Yet suddenly he was moving. Officers followed him. He drove 30 minutes north, parked near a lake, sat inside his truck, did nothing. 20 minutes later, he drove home. The following night, he repeated the same trip, again and again, 3 consecutive nights. The behavior was bizarre. What was he doing? Eventually, officers searched the area after he left. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Then one investigator discovered fresh tire tracks leading into the woods. Following them, officers stumbled upon a small fire pit, recently used. Inside the ashes were burned paper fragments. Technicians recovered several pieces. Most were destroyed. One fragment remained readable. Emily. Another fragment. October. Another fragment. Don't tell. Daniel was destroying something. But what? Investigators obtained a warrant. The entire community watched. Television helicopters hovered overhead. For the first time in 26 years, the smiling local handyman was no longer invisible. He was at the center of the biggest criminal investigation the town had ever seen. Inside his garage, Detectives discovered dozens of ordinary tools. Nothing suspicious. Inside his office, old tax records. Nothing suspicious. Inside a locked cabinet, old VHS tapes. Nothing suspicious. Then Sarah opened a drawer. A notebook. Dust covered the surface. She opened it. Page 1. A list of dates. Page 2. Names. Page 3. Schedules. Emily Carter appeared repeatedly. October 2nd. Gym. October 5th. Church. October 8th. Work. October 10th. Grocery store. October 14th. Home. The room fell silent. This wasn't random. This was surveillance. Page after page. Every movement. Every routine. Every habit. Daniel had been tracking her. For months. Then Sarah found something even worse. Additional names. 5 women. Some still lived in town. Some had moved away. One was deceased from unrelated causes. Every name had notes beside it. Time. Location. Habits. It was impossible to ignore. Emily might not have been the only target. Investigators immediately contacted the women. The reactions were terrifyingly similar. One woman remembered seeing Daniel parked near her workplace years ago. Another recalled him appearing at places she never told anyone she would visit. Another said he always seemed to know where she was. At the time, they dismissed it. Now they were horrified. The image everyone had trusted was collapsing. But Sarah still lacked one crucial piece. Proof that Daniel was a voice on the tape. Without it, prosecutors would struggle. Then an audio specialist proposed something remarkable. Voice biometrics. Modern software could compare speech patterns. They obtained recent public recordings, church speeches, volunteer events, town council meetings, hours of audio. The analysis began. Everyone waited. Hours later, the computer produced a result. Probability of match. 96.8%. The room erupted. Not definitive, but extraordinarily strong. Still, Sarah wasn't satisfied. She wanted certainty. She wanted the final blow. She wanted the one thing no defense attorney could explain away. Then fate intervened. A woman walked into the police station. 74 years old. Margaret Hill, the same retired teacher who reported the pickup truck 26 years earlier. She looked exhausted. She sat down. Then she said something nobody expected. "I didn't tell you everything." Sarah leaned forward. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was afraid." 26 years of fear. 26 years of guilt. 26 years of silence. Finally collapsing, Margaret inhaled deeply. Then she spoke the words that would transform the entire investigation. "I saw who was driving the truck." Sarah froze. "So why didn't you say anything?" Margaret trembled. "Because he saw me, too." The room became silent. He looked directly at me. Sarah's heart raced. Margaret continued. He smiled. A smile. Not panic. Not fear. A smile. As if he knew she would never speak. As if he knew silence would protect him. And for 26 years, it had. Until now. Sarah asked the question everyone was waiting for. Who was it? Margaret slowly lifted her head, her voice barely audible. It was Daniel Mercer. For the first time in 26 years, the mystery had a face. But investigators were about to discover something even more disturbing. Because Daniel Mercer wasn't preparing to surrender. He was preparing to run. And hidden somewhere inside his life was one final secret capable of changing everything they thought they knew about Emily Carter's last night alive. At 5:42 a.m., 2 unmarked police vehicles parked outside Daniel Mercer's house. The lights inside were off. The driveway was empty. His truck was gone. The front door was locked. No movement. No sound. No sign of him anywhere. Detective Sarah Monroe immediately felt it. Something was wrong. For 26 years, Daniel Mercer had hidden in plain sight. He had never attempted to leave town, never disappeared, never panicked. Until now, officers entered the house. The bed was untouched. The coffee maker was still warm. His wallet remained on the kitchen counter. His prescription glasses sat beside a newspaper. But his cell phone was gone. His truck was gone. And so was he. A statewide alert was issued within minutes. Road cameras, traffic checkpoints, license plate readers. Everyone was looking. Meanwhile, Sarah returned to the evidence room. If Daniel was running, he was afraid of something. People don't run because they're guilty. They run because they believe investigators are getting close to something they cannot afford to expose. She spread every photograph from Emily's case across a large table. Hundreds of images. The house, the kitchen, the laundry room, the backyard. Then she stopped. There was a photograph she had ignored dozens of times. A picture taken inside Emily's living room. On the coffee table sat an open magazine. In 2000, nobody cared about it. It was background noise. Today, Sarah zoomed in. Several pages had been folded. One article headline was visible. Environmental violations under investigation. A local story. A small article. Easy to overlook. Sarah searched archive newspapers. Within minutes, she found it. October 2000. A manufacturing company on the outskirts of town had been accused of illegally dumping chemical waste. The investigation never reached court. The case disappeared after a lack of evidence. Then she froze. One name appeared inside the article. Maintenance contractor, Daniel Mercer. Suddenly, the entire case shifted. Maybe Emily wasn't randomly targeted. Maybe she wasn't chosen at all. Maybe she discovered something. Sarah dug deeper. Emily volunteered at a community center that organized environmental awareness programs. 2 weeks before her disappearance, she had attended a public meeting about water contamination concerns. Nobody had ever connected those dots. Why? Because investigators focus entirely on her disappearance, not on her life. People often solve murders backward, but sometimes the victim tells the story first. Emily was asking questions. The anonymous note, stop asking questions. The tape, what you're doing is wrong. Everything pointed toward one possibility. She discovered illegal activity, and someone wanted her quiet. Sarah pulled phone records again. One number appeared repeatedly during September 2000, an unregistered payphone. 5 calls, each under 2 minutes. Then she found a notebook entry recovered from Daniel's house. October 11th, she won't stop. October 12th, she's getting too close. October 13th, need to handle it. A knot formed in Sarah's stomach. Those weren't random words. Those were escalating warnings. The next day, October 14th, Emily disappeared. At the same time, officers received a tip. Daniel's truck had been spotted near an abandoned motel 60 miles away. Police responded immediately. The building was falling apart. Broken windows, collapsed ceilings, graffiti everywhere. The truck sat alone behind the structure. Engine cold, doors locked. No Daniel. Inside the motel, officers searched every room. Nothing. Then one deputy yelled, "Over here." Inside room 12 sat a backpack. Inside the backpack were bottled water, cash, extra clothes, and several newspaper clippings about Emily Carter. He had been planning. He expected to run. But why abandon everything? Then they found a handwritten note. Just one sentence. They're finally seeing the truth. Sarah arrived minutes later. She studied the words. No fear. No regret. No apology. He wasn't acting like a cornered man. He was acting like someone preparing for the end. Then another discovery surfaced. A local hunter called police. He had seen an older man walking through a wooded area 10 miles away. Officers deployed drones, thermal cameras, search teams. Within an hour, they located him. Daniel Mercer sat beside a fallen tree, completely still. No weapon, no resistance, no attempt to escape. When officers approached, he slowly stood up. His expression was unreadable. Calm, almost relieved. One officer ordered him to raise his hands. He obeyed immediately. Then he said something chilling. 26 years is a long time to carry a secret. No one answered. He was arrested and transported to the station. The entire country was watching. News channels interrupted programming. Michigan cold case, suspect arrested. 26 years of silence may finally end. The interrogation room remained quiet for nearly an hour. Daniel sat motionless. Sarah entered, placed Emily's photograph on the table, and waited. He stared at it. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 3 minutes. Then he spoke. I didn't hate her. Sarah said nothing. He continued. She was a good person. Still, Sarah remained silent. Then he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was exhausted. The smile of someone who had spent decades carrying a burden. I warned her. Sarah leaned forward. What did you warn her about? He looked down. No answer. Sarah placed the anonymous note on the table. Stop asking questions. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second. There it was. Recognition. Sarah placed a surveillance notebook beside it, then the cassette transcript, then the photograph. His breathing changed. Small, rapid. Then he whispered, I never meant for this to happen. Sarah immediately replied, What happened that night? He looked directly at her. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed. Not loudly, not emotionally. A strange, empty laugh. I've replayed that night thousands of times. He leaned back in his chair, and every version ends the same way. Sarah stayed silent. He continued, People think monsters are born evil. He shook his head. No, they make one decision. Then another, until there's no way back. Sarah asked again, What happened to Emily? He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes moved toward the camera, toward the one-way mirror, toward the room itself, as if 26 years of secrets were pressing against him. Then he said 4 words. I wasn't alone. Everything stopped. Sarah's pulse accelerated. What do you mean? Silence. What do you mean you weren't alone? He rubbed his hands together. Slowly. Then he spoke. There was someone else. Sarah immediately pushed further. Who? He shook his head. No, not yet. The room grew tense. Because if he was telling the truth, then investigators had spent 26 years searching for one killer, while another person remained hidden in plain sight. A second person, a second witness, or perhaps a second murderer. Sarah left the room and assembled her team. Every file was reopened. Every old interview would have to be reviewed again. Every relationship re-examined. Because somewhere in 26 years of paperwork, they had missed someone. And if that person was still alive, they had just become the most important person in Michigan. Back inside the interrogation room, Daniel sat alone. Then he quietly said something no one had expected to hear. It wasn't supposed to be Emily. The entire investigation suddenly shifted once again, because if she wasn't the intended target, then someone else had been. And the truth about October 14, 2000 was far more terrifying than anyone had ever imagined. The sentence echoed through the investigation, headquarters like an explosion. It wasn't supposed to be Emily. For a moment, nobody spoke. Detective Sarah Monroe replayed the audio 3 times. Then 5. Then 10. Every word mattered now, because after 26 years of searching for answers, the entire story had suddenly changed direction. If Emily Carter was not the intended target, then her death was not simply a crime of opportunity. It was a mistake, a catastrophic mistake. But mistakes create new questions. Who was the real target? Why was Emily involved? And who was the second person Daniel Mercer claimed had been there that night? Sarah immediately ordered a full reconstruction of October 14th, 2000. Every minute, every movement, every person. The giant digital timeline stretched across an entire conference room wall. 5:12 p.m. Emily leaves work. 6:03 p.m. Grocery store purchase. 6:27 p.m. Arrives home. 7:45 p.m. Truck observed outside. 8:30 p.m. Phone call to her mother never happens. Then the timeline simply stopped. 26 years of darkness. Sarah stared at it for several minutes. Then she noticed something she had never questioned before. Emily had come home unusually early. On a normal Saturday, She often stayed at the community center until nearly 7, but not that day. Why? She pulled archived emails. One message stood out, sent at 3:48 p.m. Subject line, "We need to talk tonight." No sender name. Anonymous. No additional text. Just those 5 words. "We need to talk tonight." The message had been buried inside an old server backup and never recovered in 2000 because the technology simply wasn't advanced enough. Sarah's heartbeat accelerated. Who sent it? The IP address was impossible to trace after so many years. But timing was everything. Someone arranged a meeting. Someone expected her to be home. Then another detail emerged. Emily had made a handwritten note inside her planner. 7:30 p.m. Meet M. Just one letter. M. Who was M? Margaret? Michael? Melissa? Mercer? No one knew. Sarah reopened every relationship. Then another discovery surfaced. A forgotten witness. Thomas Reed, a former mail carrier, 72 years old. In 2000, investigators interviewed him briefly. He had remembered almost nothing. Now his memory had changed. He walked into the station carrying an old notebook. I found this while cleaning my attic. Inside were daily route notes. On October 14th, 2000, he had written something unusual. 7:18 p.m. Saw Daniel arguing with blonde woman near community center. Blonde woman. Emily was blonde. Sarah immediately showed him a photo. He pointed. That's her. The room fell silent. This changed everything. Daniel lied. He claimed he never saw Emily that day. Now that lie was collapsing. Sarah returned to the interrogation room. Daniel sat quietly, almost peaceful. She placed a notebook in front of him. He stared at it. No reaction. Then she spoke. You met Emily before she went home. He remained silent. You lied to investigators. Nothing. Then she said something different. Who was M? His eyes moved instantly. Just a fraction, but enough. Sarah pressed harder. Who was she supposed to meet? Daniel exhaled deeply. Then he whispered, Monica. The name hit the room like lightning. Monica Harris, 40 years old today. Emily's former coworker. She moved to Chicago in 2001. Investigators had interviewed her once. Only once. Her interview lasted 11 minutes. Nothing suspicious. Nothing memorable. Another forgotten person. Sarah called immediately. Monica answered. The moment she heard Emily's name, she went silent. Then she said something alarming. I've been waiting 26 years for that phone call. Sarah froze. What do you mean? Monica inhaled slowly. Because I knew someone would eventually find out. Sarah immediately flew to Chicago. Hours later, they sat face to face. Monica looked exhausted, as though she had been carrying something heavy for decades. Then she began. In the summer of 2000, she and Emily discovered unusual financial records connected to a local chemical disposal company. Invoices disappeared. Payments were hidden. Contractors received cash under false names. One of those names was Daniel Mercer. Emily wanted to expose it. Monica wanted nothing to do with it. Then things escalated. Anonymous phone calls began. Strangers parked outside their houses. Someone followed them home. Monica became terrified. Emily refused to stop. Then Monica received a warning. Walk away. She did. Emily didn't. Sarah asked the obvious question. Why didn't you tell police? Monica's eyes filled with tears. Because I was scared. The same answer again. Fear. 26 years of fear. Then Monica said something even more disturbing. The second person wasn't a stranger. Sarah leaned forward. It was someone important. Who? Monica hesitated, then answered, the owner of the company. Everything suddenly connected. The environmental violations, the anonymous threats, the note, the surveillance, the buried evidence. Emily had uncovered corruption, but Sarah still needed proof. Monica reached into her purse, removed a yellow envelope. I kept this all these years. Inside were photocopies, transactions, payments, names, signatures. Then one signature made Sarah's stomach drop. Mayor Richard Holloway, the former mayor, one of the most respected men in town, dead since 2018. Suddenly, the scale of the story exploded. This was never just about Daniel Mercer. This was bigger, much bigger. A network, corruption, illegal dumping, threats, and one woman who got too close to the truth. Sarah returned to Michigan immediately. She confronted Daniel again, placed the documents on the table. His expression changed. Fear, real fear, the first genuine emotion investigators had seen. Sarah spoke. Richard Holloway was there that night. Daniel looked away. She pressed harder. He was a second person. Silence. Then Daniel nodded. Just once. Everything stopped. 26 years. And finally, confirmation. But Sarah wasn't satisfied. She needed to know exactly what happened inside the house. Daniel closed his eyes. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he spoke. Emily recorded us. Sarah froze. The cassette tape. Emily had been smarter than anyone realized. She anticipated danger. She created evidence. Then Daniel continued. She threatened to expose everything. What happened next? He swallowed hard. Richard panicked. Sarah leaned closer. Then Daniel whispered. He pushed her. The room went silent. She fell. Hit her head. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. An accident or murder? Sarah knew better. Because what happened afterward matters more than the first act itself. If they buried her, if they hid evidence, if they threatened witnesses, if they stayed silent for 26 years, that was no accident. That was a conspiracy. Then Daniel delivered one final sentence before ending the interview. Richard wasn't afraid of prison. Sarah frowned. Then what was he afraid of? Daniel slowly lifted his head. His eyes were empty. He was afraid people would discover he had done this before. Every person inside the building froze, because suddenly Emily Carter might not have been the only victim. And somewhere inside decades of forgotten records, another secret was waiting to be uncovered. A secret older than Emily, darker than Emily. A secret that could transform one cold case into an entire hidden history of crimes that nobody had ever connected together. The room fell into absolute silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound came from the soft hum of fluorescent lights above the interrogation room. He was afraid people would discover he had done this before. Detective Sarah Monroe stared at Daniel Mercer for several seconds. A second victim. Possibly more. 26 years of silence had suddenly become something much larger. Emily Carter was no longer just a cold case. She might have been a key that unlocked an entire hidden history. Sarah immediately ordered a complete review of missing persons reports from the last 40 years. Every county, every neighboring town, every unsolved disappearance. Investigators worked through the night. Hundreds of files covered the conference room tables. Thousands of names, thousands of faces, most unrelated, some impossible to verify. Then one analyst raised his hand. Detective, I think we have something. Sarah walked over. The screen displayed a photograph. 7 years before Emily disappeared. 28-year-old Laura Bennett. Missing. Never found. Her case had faded from public memory decades ago. Single. Community volunteer. Known for speaking out against illegal dumping near local waterways. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Then another file appeared. Rachel Simmons, 34, environmental activist, received anonymous threats, disappeared, never found. Then another, Deborah Flynn, teacher, filed complaints about groundwater contamination, disappeared, never found. The room became ice cold. This wasn't random anymore. A pattern was emerging. Women, questions, threats, silence. Sarah immediately created a timeline. Every 7 years. The realization made everyone's stomach turn. If true, someone had been eliminating threats for decades. And one man sat at the center of every era. Richard Holloway, the former mayor. the beloved public figure, the smiling face that appeared in newspapers every election season, dead since 2018, protected forever from prosecution. Or so everyone thought. But dead people still leave evidence behind. Sarah dug into old archives, town council meetings, charity events, environmental reports, financial statements. Then she discovered something chilling. Every woman had attended at least one public meeting where Richard Holloway was present. Every single one. Then another bombshell surfaced. Daniel Mercer wasn't merely a handyman. He had worked directly under contracts approved by Richard Holloway. For years, their relationship stretched back decades. The pieces were finally aligning. Sarah returned to Daniel. He looked exhausted. 26 years of secrets were starting to crush him. She sat down. No aggression. No pressure. Just one question. How many were there? Daniel closed his eyes. Long silence. Then he whispered, "I don't know." Sarah stared at him. "You don't know?" He shook his head. At first, I stopped asking. That sentence sent chills through the room. At first, meaning there had been multiple incidents. "Why didn't you leave?" He laughed bitterly. "Because by then I was already trapped." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" He sighed. In 1988, Richard needed help. The room froze. Needed help. Those two words carried terrifying weight. Daniel continued. He said it was an accident. Rachel Simmons. Sarah felt her pulse rise. He told me nobody could know. Daniel looked down. He said if I spoke, my family would suffer. Fear. Again. Fear was a weapon. For decades. Threats. Manipulation. Control. Then Sarah asked, "What happened in 2000? Daniel inhaled deeply. Emily wasn't supposed to die. He repeated it. But this time, he explained, Richard Holloway intended to intimidate her. Nothing more. Scare her. Take the documents. Destroy the evidence. But Emily fought back. She refused to surrender. She threatened to expose everyone. Then everything spiraled out of control. Daniel described that night in fragments. 7:30 p.m. Richard arrived. 7:42 p.m. Daniel parked the truck. 7:50 p.m. Emily activated a cassette recorder. 7:54 p.m. The argument escalated. 7:56 p.m. Liza shove here. She fell backward. Her head struck the corner of a cabinet. Silence. Just silence. Then panic. Daniel described blood. Richard screaming. Emily motionless. Then Richard said something horrifying. No one can know. The sentence was simple, but devastating, because that was the moment an accident transformed into a crime. Instead of calling for help, instead of calling an ambulance, instead of saving her life, they chose secrecy. They wrapped her body. They drove away. They buried her. Then they erased everything they could. 26 years of silence began that night. Sarah listened without interruption. Then she asked the question everyone feared. What happened to the documents? Daniel stared at the table. They weren't destroyed. Sarah's eyes widened. Where are they? He slowly raised his head. Richard hid them. Where? Daniel hesitated, then answered, Town Hall. The room exploded into motion. Search warrants were issued immediately. Officers entered the old municipal building. Records lined every wall. Thousands of boxes. Decades of paperwork. Hours passed. Nothing. Then an investigator noticed something unusual. One filing cabinet was newer than the rest. Installed in 2001, 1 year after Emily disappeared. Inside was a false compartment, hidden behind tax records. And inside that compartment sat a sealed envelope. Emily Carter, written in black marker. Sarah opened it carefully. Inside were dozens of pages. Photographs, financial ledgers, illegal payments, environmental reports, names. Everything Emily had been collecting. Everything she died trying to expose. Then one final document appeared. A handwritten list. 3 names. Richard Holloway, Daniel Mercer, and a third person. Unknown. Everyone stared at it. Who was the third person? The handwriting belonged to Emily. She had discovered another individual involved in conspiracy. Someone still alive. Someone never identified. Someone who had escaped notice for 26 years. Sarah immediately compared signatures. Town employees. Contractors. Council members. Nothing. Then another analyst discovered something odd. The initials, JB, repeated throughout financial records. JB, hundreds of times. Payments, approvals, transfers, the invisible person. Then she froze. James Bennett, current county commissioner, 68 years old, still serving in public office, still respected, still powerful, and still alive. The room went silent again. 26 years. And the conspiracy might not be over. Because if James Bennett was involved, then one terrifying possibility remained. Someone else had been protecting the secret all along. Someone had helped keep Emily Carter buried. Someone had watched investigators fail year after year. Someone had attended memorial events, shaken hands with her family, offered sympathy, and never once revealed the truth. Sarah immediately ordered surveillance. But deep down, she already knew something. People who survived 26 years by hiding secrets rarely surrender quietly. And at that exact moment, 60 miles away, James Bennett was unknowingly receiving a phone call that would change everything. A phone call informing him that Daniel Mercer had started talking. For the first time in decades, another man had a reason to be afraid. And desperate people are often the most dangerous people of all. At 8:17 a.m., James Bennett walked out his office, carrying a cup of coffee. He looked exactly the way people expected a respected public official to look. Well-dressed, calm, approachable, the kind of man who shook hands at charity events and remembered everyone's first name. For nearly 3 decades, nobody questioned him. Nobody suspected him. Nobody imagined his name would ever appear inside a homicide investigation. But that was a terrifying lesson this town kept learning. The people who hide the biggest secrets often hide behind the most ordinary faces. Unmarked police vehicles followed him from a distance. No sirens. No confrontation. Not yet. Detective Sarah Monroe wanted evidence before she made a move. One mistake could destroy everything. Because James Bennett was powerful. He had connections. He had influence. And if he realized investigators were closing in, he could disappear before anyone had a chance to stop him. Back at headquarters, analysts were still combing through Emily Carter's recovered documents. The deeper they looked, the darker the story became. Dozens of illegal payments, fake contracts, altered invoices, environmental reports intentionally buried. The corruption stretched back nearly 20 years. Millions of dollars, hundreds of acres of contaminated land. Entire neighborhoods had unknowingly been exposed to dangerous chemicals. Emily had uncovered a scandal much bigger than anyone realized. Then investigators found another envelope, smaller, hidden between several reports. Across the front, Emily had written one sentence. If anything happens to me, start here. The room became silent. Sarah opened it. Inside was a list of dates. Every date matched a meeting attended by Richard Holloway and James Bennett. Then she noticed something else. Several dates were circled, the same years linked to the disappearances. Emily knew. She knew before she vanished. She had connected the pattern. She had figured it out. And that realization probably sealed her fate. Then another item fell from the envelope, a Polaroid photograph. Sarah stared at it. 3 men stood beside a pickup truck. Richard Holloway, Daniel Mercer, and James Bennett. The photograph was dated October 10th, 2000, for days before Emily disappeared. Everyone in the room understood immediately. This wasn't a spontaneous accident. Something had already been happening behind the scenes. Maybe Emily's death wasn't planned, but they were already preparing for a confrontation. Then Sarah received an urgent call. James Bennett was moving, fast. Surveillance officers reported that he abruptly left work and drove toward his home. Then he came back outside carrying several boxes. Minutes later, He drove away again. That was enough. Sarah ordered officers to intervene. Police vehicles surrounded him at an intersection. Traffic stopped. Pedestrians pulled out phones. James slowly lowered his window. His face remained calm. Too calm. An officer instructed him to step out. He obeyed, then smiled. The smile sent chills through everyone watching. "Am I under arrest?" he asked. Sarah arrived moments later. "Not yet." James nodded. As I expected. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't nervous. He looked prepared. That terrified Sarah, because prepared people usually know more than they admit. A warrant was immediately executed for his house. Inside, investigators found an office, bookshelves, awards, photographs, certificates. Nothing unusual. Then they discovered a hidden safe. Inside were stacks of documents, cash, old newspapers, and a black notebook. Sarah opened it. Every page was handwritten. Every page was dated. She felt her stomach tighten. Then she read the first sentence. "Richard says she knows too much. Every year, different names, different women, the same language." Then another entry. "Daniel is getting nervous." Another. "We cannot allow another public investigation." Another. "Emily refuses to back down." The notebook wasn't a confession. It was a diary, a horrifying record of years of corruption. Then Sarah turned to the final page. The last entry was dated January 2026. Just weeks ago. It said, "If they reopen the case, Daniel will break first." He knew. He anticipated everything. For years, maybe decades, James Bennett had been protecting this secret. Then investigators found a flash drive hidden inside the safe. Modern, recently used. Technicians immediately examined it. Inside were scanned copies of every illegal transaction, every hidden payment, every environmental report, everything Emily died trying to expose. Then one video file appeared. Sarah opened it. The footage was grainy. Recorded in 2016. Richard Holloway sat in a chair. Older, weaker. He was speaking directly to the camera. The room went silent. "If you're watching this," Richard said, "then something's gone terribly wrong." Sarah felt her pulse rise. Richard continued. "Emily Carter was never supposed to die." Everyone froze. Then he said something nobody expected. "It was my fault." The room remained motionless. Then he continued. "But we were not the only ones involved." Sarah's eyes widened. Not the only ones. Again, another hidden layer. Richard leaned closer to the camera. "There are people who will never allow the truth to surface." Then the video abruptly ended. No names. No explanations. Nothing. Sarah felt frustration building. Every answer was creating more questions. How many people knew? How many people participated? How many stayed silent? Then an analyst shouted, "Detective!" Sarah rushed over. The flash drive contained GPS coordinates. One location, 20 miles north of town. Remote forest. Nobody knew why. Officers deployed immediately. Hours later, they arrived. Dense trees. Abandoned terrain. Nothing obvious. Then radar equipment detected something underground. Everyone froze. Another anomaly. Another buried secret. Excavation began. Minutes passed. Then an officer uncovered a metal barrel. Then another. Then another. 3 in total. Everyone became silent. They opened the first barrel. Chemical waste. The second. Chemical waste. The third. Everyone stopped breathing. Clothing. Human remains. The nightmare was growing, because this was no longer one cold case. This was becoming a hidden history of crimes buried beneath an entire community. For decades, under everyone's feet. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, James Bennett sat in an interrogation room. Calm. Still calm. Sarah entered. She placed a notebook on the table. No reaction. She placed Richard's video transcript on the table. Still no reaction. Then she placed Emily Carter's photograph on top. His expression changed instantly, just for half a second. But enough. Sarah spoke. You knew her. He smiled faintly. I knew many people. Sarah leaned forward. 26 years ago, she discovered your secret. He said nothing. You watched her die. Silence. Then James spoke. Quietly. No. Sarah narrowed her eyes. No. He looked directly at her. I watched someone else make a decision. The sentence sent chills through her body, because once again, he wasn't denying involvement. He was distancing himself from responsibility, the oldest trick in criminal history. Then he said something unexpected. Richard wasn't the worst one. Sarah froze. The room became silent. What do you mean? James leaned back, then whispered. Richard was afraid of him too. Sarah's heart began pounding. Another person. Again. Another hidden figure. Another shadow inside the story. Then James slowly smiled. This town was built on secrets. For 26 years, investigators thought they were hunting one killer. Then they thought they were uncovering corruption. Now they were beginning to realize something even more terrifying. Someone far more dangerous might still be out there. Someone who never appeared in any records. Someone whose name had never surfaced. Someone who had successfully remained invisible while everyone else took the blame. And if James Bennett was telling the truth, the worst part of the story had not even been discovered yet. The silence inside headquarters was becoming unbearable. Every answer uncovered another layer. Every layer exposed another secret. For 26 years, investigators believed they were chasing a killer. Then they discovered corruption. Then a conspiracy. Now, they were confronting something even more dangerous. A man nobody had ever investigated. A man who never appeared in headlines. A man whose name had never surfaced publicly. And yet everyone connected to the case seemed afraid of him. His name was Victor Hale, 74 years old, former industrial consultant, officially retired, practically invisible, no criminal record, no arrests, no scandals, nothing. Too clean, far too clean. Detective Sarah Monroe had learned one thing over the past several weeks. Perfect records were often warning signs. Because real lives are messy, perfect lives are usually curated, built, protected, engineered. She gathered everything investigators knew. Victor Hale had served as a private advisor to multiple companies throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Several of those companies appeared inside Emily Carter's documents. His signature was nowhere. His name was nowhere. But his consulting firms repeatedly received payments. Small amounts, scattered amounts, always below reporting thresholds. He knew exactly how to hide. Then analysts discovered something chilling. Every major decision linked to illegal dumping eventually passed through one of Victor's companies. Indirectly, carefully, intentionally, like fingerprints wiped almost completely away. Sarah immediately ordered surveillance. Victor lived alone in a large house outside town. He followed the same routine every day. 6 a.m. Coffee. 7:30 a.m. Walk. 9 a.m. Read newspapers. Nothing unusual. Until investigators noticed something odd. Every evening at exactly 8:30 p.m., he sat silently in his office for 30 minutes. No television. No phone calls. Nothing. Just sitting, staring at a wall. One officer joked that it was strange. Sarah disagreed. People with secrets often create rituals, a way to control anxiety, a way to survive guilt. Meanwhile, Daniel Mercer requested another interview. He looked different now, smaller, exhausted, as though decades of fear were finally consuming him. Sarah entered the room. He immediately spoke. He's dangerous. Sarah already knew who he meant. Victor Hale. Why are you afraid of him? She asked. Daniel swallowed hard. Because Richard answered to him. The room fell silent. Not a partner. Not an associate. A superior. Everything shifted again. Daniel continued. Richard was never in charge. Sarah leaned closer. Who was? Daniel whispered. Victor. 26 years. And finally, the hidden architect was emerging. Then Daniel revealed something even more disturbing. Back in the late 1970s, Victor Hale had designed a network. Politicians, contractors, business owners, people who protected each other, people who buried problems, people who erased scandals before they reached the public. Emily accidentally discovered the network. She wasn't investigating murder. She was investigating environmental fraud. She simply got too close, too fast. Then Daniel said something that sent chills through the room. Emily wrote his name. Sarah froze. Where? Daniel looked confused. The diary. What diary? He stared at her. The blue diary. Sarah's heart nearly stopped. No diary had ever been recovered. No evidence log. No witness statement. Nothing. Daniel frowned. Richard took it. Immediately, officers searched Richard Holloway's archive belongings. Hours passed. Nothing. Then an evidence technician remembered something. When Richard died in 2018, several personal items had been donated to a historical society. Investigators rushed there. Hundreds of boxes lined storage shelves. One volunteer pointed toward a cardboard container. Nobody's opened that in years. Inside were photographs, letters, old campaign materials. Then a blue notebook appeared. Everyone froze. Emily Carter, written inside the cover. Sarah carefully opened it. Every page was handwritten. Every page detailed her investigation. Dates, names, transactions, conversations. Then she reached the final entry. October 14th, 2000. The last day. The final words read, "I finally know who's behind everything." Then beneath it, one name, Victor Hale. The room became silent. 26 years. 26 years. And the answer had been hidden inside a box nobody bothered to open. Then Sarah turned the page. One final sentence appeared. "If something happens to me, he will pretend he never knew me." Hours later, officers obtained warrants. Victor Hale's house was searched. The entire nation was watching. News helicopters returned. Reporters lined the streets. The community watched in disbelief. Officers entered. Everything was organized, meticulously organized. Books arranged by height. Files labeled alphabetically. Photographs perfectly aligned. It looked normal until they opened the basement. An entire room was hidden behind a false wall. Inside were cabinets. Hundreds of them, each labeled with names. People, hundreds of people, journalists, teachers, contractors, politicians, citizens. Everyone had files. Everyone had notes, schedules, habits, weaknesses. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Victor had been studying people for decades, building leverage, collecting secrets. Then she found Emily's file, 37 pages. Every movement, every meeting, every routine, every concern. The final page contained one sentence, too persistent. The date beside it, October 13th, 2000, one day before she disappeared. Then another discovery, a cassette recorder, the same model Emily used. Technicians immediately tested it. A tape remained inside. Sarah pressed play. Victor's voice filled the room. Calm, controlled, emotionless. The problem with good people. He paused. That is they believe truth always wins. Silence. Then he continued. It doesn't. The recording ended. Sarah stood frozen, because for the first time, she was hearing the mind behind 26 years of silence. But then her phone rang. An officer shouted through the receiver. He's gone. Sarah's heart dropped. Victor Hale wasn't home when officers arrived. He had vanished. No vehicle, no phone, no trace. Just gone. Again. 26 years earlier, Emily Carter vanished without warning. Now, the man believed to be behind everything had done the same. The irony was terrifying. The hunter had become the fugitive. And somewhere in Michigan, an elderly man was now running for his life. Because for the first time in decades, the silence protecting him had completely collapsed. But desperate men often make dangerous decisions. And Sarah had a terrible feeling. Victor Hale was not running to survive. He was running to destroy whatever evidence remained, before the truth became impossible to bury forever. The entire state of Michigan was now searching for one man, Victor Hale, 74 years old, former industrial consultant, master manipulator, invisible architect. For decades, he had remained hidden while others carried the blame. Now his world was collapsing. His files had been discovered. His network had been exposed. His secrets were no longer protected. And when powerful people lose control, they become unpredictable. At 4:23 a.m., an alert arrived. One of Victor's old bank cards had been used. Not for cash, not for gas, for coffee. A small roadside diner 90 miles north of town. Police deployed immediately. By the time officers arrived, he was gone, but security footage remained. Sarah watched the video. Victor looked calm, too calm. No panic, no rush, no disguise, as if he had already accepted what was coming. Then she noticed something strange. He left an envelope behind. The waitress handed it to police. Across the front, 3 words were written. For Emily Carter. The room fell silent. Sarah carefully opened it. Inside was a map. Nothing else. No explanation. Just a map. One location was circled. An abandoned water treatment facility. Then she noticed something else. Coordinates. The same coordinates Emily had partially written inside her diary years ago. Everyone mobilized immediately. Convoys of police vehicles drove north. The building sat isolated among dead trees. Massive, dark, forgotten. Nature had slowly swallowed it. Broken windows, rusted pipes, collapsed fences. The perfect place to hide secrets. Sarah entered first, flashlight in hand. Every footstep echoed through the empty corridors. Dust covered everything. Then they discovered a locked steel door. Behind it, an office, perfectly preserved. Time had stopped there. Documents, computers, storage boxes, everything abandoned. Then Sarah froze. A bulletin board covered an entire wall. Dozens of photographs. Every victim. Laura Bennett, Rachel Simmons, Emily Carter, and others, many others. People nobody had connected before. A timeline stretched 40 years. This was never one crime. This was an empire of silence. Then officers discovered videotapes. Hundreds of them, labeled by year. Sarah felt sick. Every year, every secret, documented, recorded, archived. Victor Hale had kept everything, not as trophies, as insurance. Powerful people often keep evidence against each other. Protection, leverage, survival. Then one tape stood out. October 14th, 2000. Everyone stopped. Sarah inserted it into a player. The footage began. Static. Then a room appeared. Emily's living room. The camera angle suggested it was hidden. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Emily entered. She looked nervous. Several minutes later, Richard Holloway arrived. Then Daniel Mercer. Emily immediately confronted them. The argument escalated. She held up documents. She threatened to expose everything. Then another person entered. Victor Hale. For the first time, he was there, the mastermind, standing inside her house, watching everything unfold. The room went silent. Then tragedy unfolded. Emily tried to leave. Richard grabbed her arm. She pushed him away. He shoved her. She fell backward. Her head struck the cabinet. Everyone froze. Daniel panicked. Richard panicked. But Victor remained calm, completely calm. Then he said something horrifying. She's dead. No one checked. No one called for help. No one tried to save her. Then Victor gave an order. Bury this. Just 2 words. Bury this. 26 years of silence began with those 2 words. Sarah paused the video. Nobody spoke. Every question had finally been answered. Then she resumed the recording. The men wrapped Emily in a blanket, carried her outside. Then Victor looked directly toward the hidden camera and smiled. The footage ended. The room stood frozen because evil had finally revealed itself. not through violence, not through rage, but through indifference. That was the terrifying truth. Victor Hale wasn't impulsive. He wasn't unstable. He was calculated, cold, methodical. He solved problems by erasing people. Then an officer ran inside. Detective. Sarah turned. A vehicle had been spotted nearby. Victor's vehicle. Everyone rushed outside. Drones deployed overhead. Officers spread through the woods. Then thermal cameras picked up figure. One person, walking slowly, not running, not hiding, walking. Victor Hale had stopped. Sarah approached cautiously. He stood near a lake, hands in his pockets, watching the sunrise. When he heard footsteps, he smiled. "I knew you'd find me." Sarah said nothing. He remained still. The truth always arrives eventually. She stared at him. "You murdered Emily Carter." He shook his head. "No, you ordered her burial." Silence. "You orchestrated decades of crimes." He smiled faintly. Then he said something that stunned everyone. "No." Sarah frowned. "No." Victor turned toward her. "I created a system." The words sent chills through her body. Because he believed it. He truly believed it. Not murder. Not corruption. A system. A machine that protected itself. Then Sarah spoke. "People died." He nodded. "People always die." No emotion. No regret. Nothing. Sarah had interrogated killers before. But this was different. Victor didn't see himself as a criminal. He saw himself as necessary. That made him infinitely more dangerous. Then she asked, "Why keep all the evidence?" He smiled. "Because secrets are power." Then he looked toward the sunrise. "I never thought Daniel would survive his conscience." Sarah placed him under arrest. He offered no resistance, no excuses, no anger, just acceptance. But as officers escorted him away, he said one final sentence. "Emily won." The words hung in the air. For 26 years, she had been buried, forgotten, silenced. Yet somehow, she had won, because her evidence survived, her note survived, her determination survived, and ultimately, her voice outlived every person who tried to erase her. But there was still one final chapter left, one final truth waiting to emerge, because Michigan was about to discover just how many lives had been changed by 26 years of silence, and the ending would leave an entire community forever transformed. The news spread across Michigan before sunrise. After 26 years, Emily Carter finally had an answer, not a theory, not another dead end, not another promise from investigators. The truth, raw, ugly, unavoidable. For decades, an entire community had lived beside the people responsible. They attended their weddings, their church services, their charity events. They shook their hands. They trusted them. And all along, those same people were protecting a secret buried beneath the town itself. Headlines flooded every television screen. Michigan cold case finally solved after 26 years. Secret network exposed. Hidden evidence leads to arrests. Victim's own investigation breaks the case. The entire country watched. But inside the small Michigan community where everything began, emotions were far more complicated. Relief, anger, shock, guilt. People questioned everything. Every memory, every interaction, every face they once trusted. Parents explained the story to children who had never even been born when Emily disappeared. Older residents sat quietly, remembering exactly where they were on October 14th, 2000. For many, it felt as though time itself had reopened. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued their work. The remains found at the abandoned site were officially identified as Emily Carter. After 26 years, the uncertainty was over. Her family cried. But they also smiled, because uncertainty is a unique kind of torture. Questions never stop. Hope never completely dies. And neither does fear. Now, for the first time in decades, they could finally separate grief from mystery. Emily could come home. Her mother, now 83 years old, stood before cameras holding a photograph she had carried for half her life. The same photograph, the same smile, the same daughter she never stopped believing in. She spoke only one sentence. I knew she never left us willingly. The world listened, then silence followed. The kind of silence that only truth can create. Back at headquarters, Detective Sarah Monroe sat alone inside her office. 26 years, thousands of pages, hundreds of interviews, dozens of secrets, all connected by one woman who simply refused to ignore what she had discovered. Emily Carter had never been a detective, never a journalist, never an activist. She was an ordinary person who encountered something wrong and decided to ask questions. That was all. Sometimes history changes because extraordinary people act bravely. Sometimes history changes because ordinary people refuse to look away. Sarah opened Emily's blue diary one last time. The final page still stared back at her. If something happens to me, he will pretend he never knew me. She closed the book slowly. Because Emily had been right. Every one of them pretended. Pretended they were innocent. Pretended they didn't know. Pretended silence would protect them forever. But silence is fragile. Eventually it breaks. One person remembers. One witness speaks. One forgotten box gets opened. One old photograph gets re-examined. And suddenly, decades of lies begin to collapse. Then came another announcement. Additional remains discovered at the abandoned water treatment facility had been linked to two previously unsolved disappearances. Laura Bennett, Rachel Simmons. Families who had waited decades also received answers. 3 women, 3 stories, 3 lives stolen by fear and corruption. The investigation would continue for years. Because the network Victor Hale built was far larger than anyone first imagined. Financial crimes, environmental crimes, witness intimidation, fraud, conspiracy. Every week uncovered something new. But one thing never changed. Emily Carter remained at the center of it all. The woman whose determination destroyed an entire empire's secrets. Months later, the town gathered for a memorial. Hundreds attended. No television cameras. No reporters. Just people. Neighbors. Friends. Families. The community center where Emily once volunteered installed a plaque. Simple. Elegant. It read, Emily Carter, 1969 to 2000. Her courage outlived silence. People stood quietly reading it. Some cried. Some smiled. Some simply stared. Then life slowly resumed. Children rode bicycles again. Families walked their dogs. Restaurants reopened their patios. The town began to heal. But healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without fear. Years from now, people would still tell the story. Not because of the horror. Not because of the criminals. But because of Emily. Because evil always wants one thing. To erase people. To make them disappear. To make the world move on without them. And 26 years later, evil had failed. Completely. Then came one final revelation. During the final review of Victor Hale's hidden archives, investigators found a sealed letter addressed to nobody in particular. Inside was a single paragraph. No apology. No confession. Just one sentence. The greatest weapon was never violence. It was convincing everyone to stay silent. Sarah read it once, then placed it back inside the evidence folder. Because he was right. Silence had protected them. Silence had hidden bodies. Silence had buried evidence. Silence had controlled entire lives. But silence had also been defeated. By a diary. By an old cassette tape. By one witness who finally spoke. By one detective who refused to quit. And by a woman who never stopped asking questions. 26 years earlier, on a cold October night in Michigan, someone believed they had erased a life forever. They believed the earth would protect them. They believed time would protect them. They believed fear would protect them. They were wrong. Because the truth is patient. It waits. Sometimes for months. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for decades. And when it does, it arrives all at once. Not as a whisper. Not as a rumor. but as something impossible to stop. Long after the criminals were exposed, people still drove past Emily's old house. The trees had grown taller. The sidewalks had changed. New families lived there now. Yet every October, flowers quietly appeared near the front porch. Nobody knew who left them. Nobody asked. Perhaps it was a neighbor, perhaps an old friend, perhaps someone who simply remembered, because some stories refuse to disappear. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. Somewhere beyond the headlines, beyond the courtrooms, beyond 26 years of silence, one truth remained. Emily Carter was never forgotten. And in the end, that is why the silence finally lost.